This is Earth. Doing so is risky. Oh, it's going to get nasty when that storm comes rolling in. You are helpless. There is nowhere to run. Prepare for it. Cornelia Marie was the embodiment of Deadliest catch for almost a decade. Became familiar with it as the abode of the seafaring, lovable, and sometimes ruthless Captain Phil Harris. Josh and Jake, his sons, rose to their feet and pledged to continue his legacy after him. Their supporters cheered them on. However, August 2022 marked a turning point. When considering, mysteriously appeared online, a long-lost court document. It appeared to be little more than another dusty legal document at first. Josh Harris had been covering up a horrible secret for 24 years, but the truth came out as investigations progressed. An incredibly unnerving and terrible crime that had a profound impact on devotees. Discovery quickly removed all references to Cornelia Marie from their programming. Then streaming services followed suit, removing complete seasons seemingly out of thin air. Then, what precisely was Josh's action? First steps. To construct the Cornelia Marie, Horton boats of Bayou Labatt, Alabama, was engaged in 1989. There were generations of skill and experience behind each weld in Labatra, a tiny town known for its saltwater shipbuilding. Launching hundreds of vessels over the decades, the town was known for its tireless yards and weathered constructors. Crabbers, shrimp boats, and trawlers, all at once. However, the Cornelia Marie wasn't your run-of-the-mill employer. It was the last act of its kind. Elmo Horton, whose fame endures in Gulf Coast lore, oversaw this last major commercial construction project. The marine community. The Cornelia Marie was constructed to excel in the Bering Sea with her long, sleek deck, broad beam, and strong steel structure. Its beam was 28 feet wide and its length was 128 feet. Sitting deep and steady, its draft was little over 11 feet. Crafted from robust steel and designed to withstand the harsh conditions of the Bering Sea. Its reinforced hull and heavy load were just two examples of how it was built for durability. It had actual power below deck. Cummins QSK 19M 2-in-1. Diesel engines provided the Cornelia Marie with the propulsion necessary to overcome seas and evade approaching storms. The ship could reach speeds of up to 14.5 knots, which was swift for a vessel of its size and class, thanks to the 750 horsepower produced by each engine. In the fast-paced world of short crab, every second counts. Time of year. This boat accelerated when others decelerated. The Cornelia Marie can contain up to 28,500 g of fuel and an additional 3,000 g of fresh water in her tanks. It would be able to remain at sea for an extended period of time without having to dock. A crucial benefit in the pursuit. The harsh and ever-changing realm of Alaskan crab fishing. With that kind of range, it became a formidable rival. This boat could go farther and fish for longer than its competitors, who had to consider fuel constraints in relation to crab quantities. In the midst of a storm that may drag you miles adrift on the Bering Sea, where every second counts. Without assistance, that independence could imply the difference between success and failure or life and death. There was a $2 price tag. Costing $5 million to construct, it was a huge bet that paid off. The Cornelia Marie became famous for her speed and efficiency in little time at all, in addition to her powerful build, stability, and the capacity to transport heavy loads in the world's most hostile seas. There was something unique about the boat's name that made it stand out from the others in the fleet. Unlike many captains before him, the build's commissioning father, Ralph Collins, didn't go with a mythological character or lyrical expression. He honored his late wife, Cornelia Marie Collins, with the name. This served as an acknowledgement of collaboration. Cornelia was not the type to sit on the sidelines and do nothing. She was his right-hand woman as they ran the company, handling money, logistics, and all the other invisible needs that maintain a boat's buoyancy. It was an act of reverence to name the ship after her. Cornelia continued to hold a partial ownership interest even after their marriage ended. The name remained on to the hull throughout. When it happened, it was already more than just paint and script, and millions of others would come to recognize it over time. The Cornelia Marie was easily identifiable by its bright yellow flags, aquamarine hull, and white trim. It was self-announcing. While waiting for weather in Dutch Harbor, it might have been docked in Kodiak. Whether it was pushed through the waterways or docked, the boat's distinctive appearance made it stand out. However, the painting wasn't merely cosmetic. Right from the start, the Cornelia Marie dove headfirst into the rough waters of the Bering Sea. Its prey included salmon, herring, king crabs, and opilio crabs. Dangers are brought by each season. The seas here were among the most treacherous on the planet, yet this vessel was designed to sail through them all. Many of her competitors would have trouble keeping up with the Cornelia Marie's massive fuel tanks and large freshwater capacity. As some were compelled to return for supplies, the fishing continued. In a fishing industry when time is of the essence and profits are slim, it contributed to the boat's image as a formidable opponent. Both longtime sailors and those just starting out made up the Cornelia Marie's initial crew. A small number of them were to the exhilaration, peril, and potential for large rewards. Some were barely getting by, while others were desperately attempting to escape their past or begin anew. They were all subjected to the same harsh conditions, regardless. Cold waves crashed unannounced into the ship, drenching it in their wake. The icy depths. A warning that could not be ignored resounded through the rigging as winds howled. It was risky business every shift. An individual risks drowning if he takes even a single misstep. Trip after trip, Cornelia Marie persisted. The Cornelia Marie was a part of the frantic hunt for survivors in 2005, during the terrible winter when Big Valley was submerged in freezing darkness. Even though just one soldier made it out of the debris alive, the mission had an impact. Such endeavors contributed to the establishment of Cornelia Marie's standing in society. This was more than just a crab-hauling craft. The boat had become legendary among the people who lived on the brink of the world long before it was captured on film or became famous. During the early part of the 20th century, Cornelia Marie had turned into its own shining light. She gained 22 feet in length during a massive overhaul, increasing her crab capacity to 100,000 pounds. The boat's capacity to haul in over 300,000 pounds of crab on a single trip has increased to full haul. As competing vessels endured challenging seasons despite being pressed, Cornelia Marie maintained her strength. A lot of effort, good judgment, and frequent decision-making went into its accomplishment. All the characteristics that would make the yacht ideal for reality shows in the future. Phil Harris was important to that narrative. After proving himself in the early 90s, he joined the team and eventually became a co-owner. He had assumed the role of captain by 1998. A time of change. Phil Harris was extremely demanding, ruthless, and devoted to his team. Through thick and thin, through every storm, accident, and sleepless night on the rails, he was there for the men of the Cornelia Marie, supporting them like family. That yacht had a special place in his heart. It had a profound impact on Cornelia Marie's identity and continued for over 20 years. His adventure. He started out in the fishing industry at the tender age of 8 in the sleepy little town of Bottle, Washington, where his father taught him the ropes. Harris left high school when he was 17 years old. His interest in crab fishing was piqued by financial considerations. In one season, a friend of mine won almost $100,000 and took home a shiny new automobile. At the same time, Harris was dissatisfied with his life in an old Chevelle and decided to leave for the north. Almost broke him was the first season. Harris returned with a point to prove after quitting once and making no progress. The captain had mocked him for his departure. He was 19 years old when he, at last, made $130,000 in a season. He bought his first boat, the Golden Viking, 2 years later, when he was 21 years old. On his birthday, his skipper gave him the wheel. That ought to have been cause for joy, but instead there was crippling debt, malfunctioning machinery, as well as the extremely challenging endeavor of gaining respect as a youthful leader. He faced the prospect of paying $50,000 for immediate repairs at one point. While most individuals would have bolted, Harris stayed. Although he was just in his mid-20s when he became famous as one of the hardest seafarers with the most intelligence. He had a reputation for being a chain smoker and a commanding figure. Despite his icy exterior, he cared profoundly. Fairly, he divided the gains. He earned the respect of his crew by always doing what he himself wouldn't do. Season after season, they endured the worst that the sea had to offer, and many of them returned. That was a different tale for his private life. My history includes 2 divorces and a battle with substance misuse. He wasn't flawless, but he sacrificed everything for the sake of the ship and its people. He couldn't sleep at night because he was afraid his team could return home empty-handed because of empty crab pots. He just couldn't wrap his head around that. Major transformations occurred on the Cornelia Marie when she was under Harris's command. After a thorough restoration, the vessel was divided into 4 halves and lengthened by 22 feet. That increased the crab capacity by 100,000 pounds. He was joined on deck by his sons Josh and Jake, who transformed the Cornelia Marie from a mere fishing vessel. Considerable events transpired in 2005. In the 2nd season of Deadliest Catch, the Cornelia Marie was one of just 4 boats to receive full broadcast coverage. The producer's work was challenging. On the Bering Sea, more than 250 vessels competed for the finest. Ultimately, they were able to reduce the number of items to around 89. Both the Cornelia Marie and Captain Phil Harris were notable for their powerful captures. Initially, Phil was not persuaded. The thought of cameras following his team around was something he despised. The prospect of filming would be an annoyance, disrupt the workflow, or, worse, record an embarrassing or potentially life-threatening incident. A trustworthy vessel was desired by Discovery Channel. But Phil intended to shield his workers from harm while they fished. However, the moment was. I understand. There was a sea change in the sector that year. Rather than a derby-style crab season, there is now an individual fishing quota system. It reduced the mayhem but increased the standard. Ships were selected based on their ability alone. The Cornelia Marie was rightfully considered a member of that exclusive club. Including his sons Josh and Jake in the venture was a daring decision on Phil's part. It elevated the program to a whole new level. But Phil wasn't really nice to them. He exerted the same amount of force as everyone else. What people witnessed on TV actually happened. There was leadership, there was work, and there were times when parenting and leadership clashed. Among fans, one scene remains memorable. "You need to go to treatment, man," Phil urged to Jake in that scene. The cameras stuck with the brothers as they mastered crab fishing, and even when Phil's health started to deteriorate, they kept shooting. Many had witnessed his leadership, struggles, and love for others. Much of it was Phil's forthrightness. Of the reasons why many felt a magnetic pull toward him. He was unflinchingly honest, had a fiery personality, and could be humorous when he wanted to be. Quotes like, "Now you know why lions eat their young," and "I feel like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest," are sure to stick in people's minds. His sense of humor got him through the tough times. The fact that he had his boat also helped him get through. There was something unusual about this Cornelia Marie. Aquamarine, white, and yellow, that daring combination, made it a brand. Everything from mugs to hats to small model ships was sold to the fans. Whenever it was in port, people would share images, as if it were a long-lost acquaintance. The enduring impact of the image persisted through ownership changes and temporary absences from the show. The boat's fame was also derived from its numbers. Big catches were made from the start by the Cornelia Marie. It was a top boat in 2005's harsh season. Phil stayed out longer, raced opponents, and chased storms with all his might. He gained the strength to do it on the boat. Carrying approximately 300 tons of crab, it is 128 feet in length. As a result, there would be more time to pull in pots and fewer excursions back to port. It wasn't just entertaining television. They demonstrated competence and work of the team. To what lengths Phil was willing to go, they demonstrated. Nevertheless, a different narrative was unfolding. Both Phil and his battle with addiction were outsized. It wasn't just the captain issuing commands from the bridge. He was the one that had a lit cigarette in his hand at all times. Everything was seen on the show. The stacks of Red Bull cans that looked like fuel cells, the never-ending pots of coffee, and the chain smokers. I thought that was a character quirk, but he was slowly succumbing to it. While at sea in 2008, Phil had a pulmonary aneurysm. There ought to have been a turning point at that point. His medical colleagues pleaded with him to cease and desist. Phil refused to give up, despite the pleading of his crew and sons. He persisted in his vices, smoking, alcohol, and stress. Phil suffered a big stroke in 2010 when he was 53 years old. The Harris family was cursed with addiction, unfortunately. Suddenly, everything shifted. Phil had an unexpected breakdown on January 29, 2010, when the team was unloading crab. Devastating stroke. His team immediately began radioing for assistance. An ambulance arrived quickly. Due to its extreme isolation, St. Paul Island was hundreds of miles from the closest large hospital. After stabilizing Phil, landed him in Anchorage after coordinating a medical evacuation. Tragically, Phil was whisked away while he fought for his life, leaving his sons and crew behind in shock. Every second, every panicked radio communication was caught on film. Difficult questions were prompted. Would it be right to expose the world to such anguish? Philip was unable to respond affirmatively. The family and Discovery collaborated closely. The boys from Harris agreed. In memory of their father, they hoped that the truth would be revealed. However, many are concerned with the decision even now. For a while there, it looked like Phil had a shot at winning. His fists clenched. He grinned and chatted. The doctors were shocked. Phil was able to recover in days, whereas other stroke sufferers take months. So, everything was altered by an abrupt cerebral hemorrhage. The prognosis for Phil deteriorated. He had friends and sons who remained by his side. Farewell was the only remaining option. For Phil Harris, the end came on February 9, 2010. His remains were scattered. The majority laid in the gas tank of his Harley-Davidson beside his mother's bones. They floated out to sea. His dwelling place had always been the ocean. Redemption Day, the Deadliest catch episode, aired on July 20, 2010, 4 million individuals tuned in. It quickly rose to the ranks of the show's most watched episodes. According to several, they were moved to tears by the Harris family's story. Now it was more than simply a performance. As a captain, Phil Harris was more than that. Deadliest catch revolved around him. Fans continue to share his words online even after he passed away. His sayings are still worn on shirts and hats. Even now, his memory and legacy are very much alive. Tragic circumstances befell Captain Phil Harris's kids, Josh and Jake, following his death in February 2010. Very difficult and challenging undertaking. They hoped that Cornelia Marie may remain a family member. Nevertheless, they lacked complete ownership, and the expense of acquiring the other parties would exceed their expectations. The yacht needed major repairs as well, which made matters more challenging still. Loans were sought after again and time again by the brothers. But nobody took them seriously. Investors and banks thought they were too young, naive, and dangerous to gamble their money on. Furthermore, there were conflicts within the family. Marie Cornelia Devlin, the lady who the boat was named for, and a significant portion was owned by Phil's ex-business partner. The Harris brothers and she had different opinions on occasion. Tense negotiations ensued. Jake and Josh battled for a long time to preserve their father's name and work. They were in an effort to win over their crew, fellow fishermen, and the show's massive audience. At times, it appeared as though they could never achieve success. A difficult period for the Cornelia Marie began after Phil's passing. And longtime friend of Phil's, Derek Ray, took over as captain for the time being. It was his responsibility to grant Phil's request that Deadliest catch keep telling the narrative of the boat. Nevertheless, tensions arose under Ray's leadership. He was really rigid. The Mourning brothers, particularly Jake, and he had a falling out. In an effort to humiliate Jake, Ray went so far as to accuse him of drug use while on board and even contacted the authorities. Both the workers and the fans were taken aback by that moment. When Phil was at the helm, the whole boat felt one. The crew nearly rebelled when the crab hull was in financial distress. Ray was held responsible by them for both the loss of crab and his severe demeanor. Among the most tragic and agonizing times of Cornelia Marie's life, this was this time. After a long and difficult journey, Josh finally discovered a means to go forward. His longtime friend Casey McManus, now an accomplished engineer and deckhand, was his partner in this venture. They pooled their resources and paid for it all. Cornelia Marie was purchased by Josh for 45%. Of those, Casey acquired 5%. Two outside investors split the remaining 50%, each owning 25%. They were able to revamp thanks to this arrangement. That vessel, they upgraded with new Cummins engines that produced 750 horsepower in addition to other significant changes. After Josh and Casey became co-captains in 2015, they had to find new financial backers so they could upgrade to 2,758 horsepower Cummins diesels. The crew salaries, gas, insurance, and maintenance were all part of the budget. Josh compared it to a money black hole. Things were already bad before the pandemic hit. Wages for the crew increased by a factor of 10. Every new season seemed like a risk. Catastrophe could ensue with only one miscatch. Hunting golden king crab in deeper, more dangerous seas was one of the major risks that had to be taken in order to survive. The cameras brought an additional dimension. Keeping the crew safe wasn't always a priority for the show. The risk of crab fishing was already high before producers started filming in the midst of storms, postponing expeditions, and aiming for dramatic tension. The boat was even removed from the broadcast on occasion by Discovery Channel. It wasn't fishing, it was matters of image or law. Sea survival was a delicate balancing act for the crew. In front of an audience of millions who are watching on television. Cummins and Josh had their share of arguments, which confused spectators, but they worked together to save the Cornelia Marie and return it to Deadliest catch. It was chaos in Jake's world while Josh worked to restore the boat and his future. His addiction was getting worse, and it had begun before Phil passed away. Phil confronted Jake about stealing pills in a program that aired to millions of viewers. Addiction was something Jake acknowledged. When Phil left, things deteriorated further. No longer exist. Drunk driving led to Jake's arrest. Once again, he was taken into custody in 2017 on charges of narcotics possession and vehicle theft. He was incarcerated in 2019 for his 2019 DUI and his 2019 heroin distribution attempt. In 2024, it reached a peak when he engaged in a high-speed pursuit with the police and ultimately, a prison term of 18 months. Both Josh and Cornelia Marie drifted apart from Jake. The shocking absence of Cornelia Marie and Josh from Deadliest Catch Season 13 in October 2016 startled many. The rumors became viral on social media. Josh proceeded to share a video on Help to make clear. The producers had just chosen to divert their attention that season to other boats. Josh expressed his dissatisfaction and reassured the audience that the team was prepared to go fishing. The audience was enraged. Until Cornelia Marie returned, many said they would not watch the show. It was the network's intention to switch up the plots. They felt that after all these years, the show needed new perspectives to pique viewers' interest. It was annoying though for Josh and the rest of the staff. The show had the power to make or break their lives. A horrible health problem added insult to injury for the Harris family. Someone from the family ended up in the intensive care unit more than once. A huge heart attack struck Renee Harris in July of 2024. She was in critical care for a week after requiring a double bypass and was in a critical condition for days. For times her heart stopped. Some members of the family had to deal with serious health issues, such as strokes and brain bleeds. They had to prioritize staying alive above fishing or filming due to the overwhelming stress. Supporters came together, sent them money, and encouraging messages. Captain Grant Harris was Josh's grandpa, and his death further deepened the pain. This was Josh's second devastating loss. The first was Phil. It was a heavy burden for Josh to face his problems while also live up to the legacy of 2 generations of captains. He knows full well the difficulty of overcoming anxiety and sadness. But he was even more motivated after those setbacks. He decided to continue telling the Cornelia Marie narrative in memory of his grandpa and dad. The Deadliest Catch team evolved into something more than just cameramen throughout the course of the show. Like a family, they grew close. Fearful waters, icy winds, and restless nights were all they encountered. They witnessed the triumphs, tragedies, and private moments of the Harris family. Occasionally, they needed to take a step back during time for oneself. However, they frequently did the cooking, cleaning, and even escalating tensions together. Deadliest Catch fans noticed a surge of enthusiasm when Cornelia Marie reappeared in Season 14. The boat's 2017 disappearance devastated many watchers. When Discovery revealed it will be back for the upcoming 2018 season, enthusiasm skyrocketed. A deluge of comments, memes, and petitions pleading with the network to retain the boat in the lineup descended across social media. When fans saw that Josh Harris and Casey McManus were hosting, the ratings skyrocketed. Curious fans wanted to know if the next generation could live up to Phil's legendary status. Joy and relief shone through. Reviving the Cornelia Marie was like reclaiming a lost piece of the show's essence. Deadliest Catch Bloodline debuted in 2012, giving the Harris narrative a shocking new twist. The storyline shifted in this spin-off from the frozen tundra of Alaska to sunny coastlines of Hawaii. Josh discovered 50 or 60 vintage fishing charts stashed away in his dad's stateroom aboard the Cornelia Marie, and that was the beginning of it all. 3 of the maps belonged to Hawaii and contained unusual annotations and fishing sites. Josh, who was hell-bent on following his dad's leads, joined forces with Casey and a neighbor, navigator by the name of Jeff Silva. They worked together to uncover the mysteries contained inside Phil's maps. Big fish, such as AI tuna, might fetch $2,000 apiece, but that wasn't all they were hunting. A long-lost chapter of Phil's life was about to be revealed. Intergenerational fishing. On an individual mission, a change in leadership was gradually becoming visible as the Cornelia Marie continued to sail. Casey McManus started to have a larger role. As Josh dealt with his own issues, both legal and personal, Casey rose to the occasion. Season 14 saw Casey making crucial decisions and gaining command of the boat. His expertise ensured the Cornelia Marie ran efficiently and profitably behind the scenes. The revelation of Josh's dark secrets, however, further diminished his significance. The real Josh story. His guilty plea to sexually assaulting a juvenile from years ago was made public in September 2022, which was the biggest blow. Discover moved swiftly. After severing connections with Josh, they pulled Bloodline and Deadliest Catch from streaming services. It seemed like overnight, Josh's reputation plummeted. Old court documents initially appeared online in August 2022, triggering the bombshell. The news that Josh, who was 15 years old in 1998, sexually molested a family friend's daughter, who was 4 years old, shocked fans. Specifics of the case involved were horrifying. The following year, charges were finally brought out due to DNA delays. After serving 9 months in prison for a lesser charge, Josh entered a guilty plea in 1999. 2 years of therapy were also required of him. Quite a lot. Reasoning that, considering the gravity of the crime, the penalty was excessively mild. Hidden from view for over 20 years was this shadowy history. Fans were deceived and furious when the truth was revealed. They questioned how a crime of this gravity could have gone unnoticed. As soon as word got out, Discovery got to work. In the United States, Canada, and elsewhere, older episodes suddenly disappeared from streaming providers. Nothing remained, not even advertisements. A connection to the scandal was something the network preferred to avoid. Opinions among fans were divided. While some lauded Discovery's quick response, others wept over Cornelia Marie's disappearance from their televisions. Even though Casey McManus was completely innocent, she too had to pay the consequence. Discovery severed relations with Casey at the same time they severed connections with Josh. He left the show without a renewal in his contract and due to his own fault. The fans thought it was unjust. Despite Casey's long history of respect, he was swept away by the storm. A fresh chapter was begun by Cornelia Marie in 2024. Taylor Jensen and a group of investors announced the purchase of that vessel. On the squad were Jake Albanino, Carrie Toya, Roger Thomas, and Jensen. Cornelia Marie's admirers were ecstatic to see new leadership with Albanino's appointment as captain. It was made plain by the new owners that although they respected the boats, historically, fishing, not fame, would have been their primary concern. Cornelia Marie had finally broken free of the Harris family's clutches after Phil Harris's passing. Is that something you can get behind? Leave a comment with your ideas. Please subscribe and like the video. Before you leave, please play the video that is currently playing.